And welcome back to the Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Arcega in Washington. Well, in a global economy, business trends in one country can often have a huge impact in another. For example, a florist in Mexico who believes she's going to sell more flowers when a U.S. manufacturing company relocates there. Or the Mexican investor who decides to open a print shop in the U.S. because he thinks it's easier to start a new business here. Now, that's how international business works. But what happens to workers when their company and their jobs move to another country? VOA's Carolyn Presutti has more on that.
Two businesses in two cities, one in a Midwestern U.S. city with 2 million people. The other in one of the wealthiest industrial states in Mexico, population 1 million. Here, Victoria Alde runs a florist stand in the suburbs of Monterrey. She counts on customers from the U.S. Carrier plant. For Mexican-American Luis Bustos, starting a printing shop in Indianapolis was easier than Mexico. In the past 15 years, Indiana lost 100,000 manufacturing jobs. It's gaining some of them back, but not all. President-elect Donald Trump arranged $7 million in tax savings to save the jobs at the Carrier Heating and Air Conditioning factory. Just 2.5 kilometers away from Carrier is the Rexnord plant, closing in March. It's 300 jobs going to Mexico. Rexnord worker Joshua Schartzner says the Carrier arrangement puts the government in a new role of picking winners and losers.
There's going to be people lining up outside the door, asking, where's my deal? What's my motivation to stay in America? What are you going to give me?
So, is it up to the government to decide which company stays and how many jobs to save? Well, to help us out with that, we are joined here in Washington by VOA's award-winning journalist Carolyn Presutti, whose report you just heard, and of course by VOA Spanish language service correspondent Celia Mendoza in New York via Skype. Carolyn, the blame game in this election cycle is what I want to start with, because there's this campaign rhetoric that basically states it's the government's fault that companies are moving south, that you're losing manufacturing jobs. Is there any truth to that, or what is going on here?
It's definitely the blame game for political sake, right? But you know what President-elect Trump came out and said was fascinating. He said what he learned in this whole Carrier experience was the fact that companies aren't complaining as much about regulations. They really care about higher taxes. And so hence offering Carrier $7 million in tax incentives worked to help them keep half of their jobs here.
So what do we really know about this Carrier deal? We know $7 million in incentives was involved. How many jobs were actually saved?
Well, that's where the controversy comes in. It's actually 800 jobs that were saved, but Carrier, though, is still sending 550 union jobs to Mexico. And so these were jobs...
Trump did not mention that at all.
Well, no, he didn't. And that's kind of, if you go really down, if you delve into those numbers, that's what you find out. But the real story was the fact that Carrier is not closing its Indianapolis plant.
Mm-hmm.
But...
For now.
Right. Well, for 10 years, because they're in a 10-year agreement.
People are, in fact, getting laid off?
Yes, they are.
And
they will be.
American jobs are still going to Mexico, right?
Absolutely. A lot of those people, they first made this announcement in February. A lot of those people have since left because they were afraid that they would be the ones laid off. But the company still will be laying off 550 workers to move to Mexico, which is so much cheaper.
Yeah, all right. I want to talk to you about, there's sort of a game of a bit of a Twitter war going on between the union and the president-elect right now. But Celia, I want to get to you on this. So how does Mexico feel about the loss of jobs that were supposed to go to Mexico? Any reaction yet?
Yeah, definitely. For them, it was uncertainty. After President-elect Donald Trump was elected, that was the first feeling. They didn't think it was going to be an action taken by him right away, and this took them by surprise. The fact that he got a mingle between the deal of a private company coming to Mexico, especially Monterrey. Monterrey has the largest amount of companies that are foreign companies than American companies established there. Carrier is one of those. For over 30 years, they actually have had Carrier in in Santa Catarina, which is the little town that has created, according to the mayor, 70,000 jobs over the past few years. So that gave them a little bit of uncertainty. However, the fact that the amount of jobs was not the 1,000 over 1,000 that was talked initially gave them a little bit of a confidence that this company will stay, that they will keep getting jobs, but they're more aware of what's happening, and that gives them a little bit of alert.
Celia, are there any hard feelings in Mexico, given Trump's habit of making both China and Mexico, countries like Mexico and China, scapegoats for all the job losses that are happening here in the United States?
Definitely they do. You can feel that Mexicans do not like President-elect Donald Trump. They feel threatened by him. They feel that he's a bad neighbor. It feels like they're going through a breakup with the United States. And their emotions are very, very strong. It goes beyond politics. They feel that it's personal, that his decisions go beyond taking jobs, but it goes because he has a deep, and I wouldn't say hatred, but dislike of Mexicans.
Right. And Carolyn, speaking of getting personal, I know some union bosses are not too happy with Donald Trump regarding this deal with Carrier. What is a dispute over? Is it over the numbers? Yes. Exaggeration? What is it?
Totally over the numbers. We spoke with the local president, Chuck Jones, who incidentally uses a flip phone still.
Yeah, he's famous for that now.
Yeah, he is famous for that. And so he doesn't tweet. He doesn't know about the tweets. And so Donald Trump was upset with him, saying that Donald Trump lied about the numbers, because added into the numbers were 350 numbers of R&D, research and development workers, which were never thought to be going to Mexico. They were always staying in Indianapolis. And so when you add those in, it does equal 1,000 or even over 1,000 jobs. And so Chuck Jones started saying, well, that's a lie, because these 3,000 were always staying here. President-elect Trump then took to the Twitter war and called him out. And so here's this union boss, in this Twitter war with a union boss who doesn't even use Twitter. He didn't even know about it.
Now, Carolyn, this is just one company. What happens if another corporation says, hey, Carrier got such a good deal, what are you going to give us? I mean, is there a danger when the president's office starts negotiating deals one by one?
Absolutely. It puts the government in the place of picking favorites, right? Yeah. Which is a very unusual role for the government. So we already have companies coming forward and saying, what about us? Rexnord, a ball bearing company, which is just 2.5 kilometers away from the Carrier plant in Indianapolis. They're planning on shutting down, 300 jobs going to Mexico. And I spoke with one worker who said, hey, we should be next. I want my Christmas surprise in the mail.
Everybody's going to want a piece of this pie. Celia, we're running quickly out of time. There was also Trump's promise to renegotiate NAFTA during the election cycle. How disruptive could that be for Mexico's economy?
It will be very disruptive. We saw it during election night. The Mexican peso went to their lowest level. They exchanged the dollar for the first time, went to 20 pesos per dollar, which is extremely high. And they are worried about it. However, the president of Mexico is being cautious. His team of finance is looking over the different options. But it is very important for Mexico to keep the United States as their partner in business. We saw that China jump into the possibility of trying to make business with Mexico and take chance of this opportunity after Trump. They are evaluating and trying to see what happens. However, one mayor, the one that actually is in Apodaca, where the Rexnord is building a huge company, said that they are not worried because the money is in Mexico. They still bring in the jobs. Even if Rexnord moved their employees or not, they already signed a contract for 20 years and they will have to pay the rent. It's
going to be interesting to see how the relationship between Mexico and the United States develops after this. But my thanks to our correspondents, Carolyn Presutti and Celia Mendoza. Still ahead, veterans remember the December date that continues to live in infamy 75 years later. And just a reminder, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, and comments on our Facebook page. The address is VOA The Correspondents. We'll be right back.